Gracious God, Spirit of light and love and truth, we call on your presence among us. Let us rejoice, for we gather in celebration of barriers knocked down, of history finally being shared, of achievements mounting with recognition, and of the forward march of dignity and freedom. Let us be mournful, for we gather in sorrow, for wounds old and new that have not healed, for opportunities and lives lost to injustice and apathy, and of systems of oppression that mutate before they can be cured. Let us be steady, for we gather in fear of losing ground gained at such a cost, of race being invoked towards political gain and social oppression, and of resentments that are manipulated to divide us rather than truths that are honored to unite us. Gracious God, the light and the love and the truth are yours, but the work is ours. Bless us with readiness, for we gather in Oakland. Grant us the gentle courage to always rise up for this sacred work. Amen. Blessed be Ashe.
Thank you, Chaplain, for that wonderful invitation. At this time, I'd like to introduce Vice Admiral Ray. I'm sure everyone is very familiar with this man.
So don't read it. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be here today, chaps. Not very often do prayers get clapped for, so that's far away. Thank the children for that wonderful Pledge of Allegiance. I want to thank you all for being here. Mostly, I want to thank the folks that organized this. It's important to do this for reasons I'll mention in just a second. And I'll be very brief because I certainly don't want to take time away from our esteemed speaker. The theme for this year's celebration, commemoration is hallowed ground. I love that. I thought about that a lot before I came here today. I love it because it speaks to acts of people, acts of courage. You don't get hallowed ground without people consecrating that ground. And certainly we're all familiar with Birmingham. We're familiar with Mobile, and we're familiar with Little Rock Central, and we're familiar with the Lincoln Memorial and what was done there. That's hallowed ground for reasons that we all know and that we celebrate. But I tell you, I am proud to be in an organization where we have hallowed ground. We have hallowed water. We have hallowed harbors. And we have hallowed beaches where African Americans from the earliest days of our service have consecrated that ground. You can go back to the war with Spain in Cuba, when Henry Savage, a cook, and Moses Jones, a steward's mate, were served as part of a crew that were recognized with Congressional Medal, Gold Medal. You can go back to Richard Etheridge from the Pea Island Life-Saving Station off the coast of Carolina, first African American crew, and they distinguished themselves and saved multiple vessels there just through their courage and their determination at a time when it was not common for people of color to be in positions of responsibility. You can go to Mike Healy, who's buried right over here in San Francisco, who was the law in Alaska for a period of a quarter of a century. You can go to Alex Haley, and all of us remember that great documentary. I remember, some of you youngsters know, in the 70s, Roots, which I think really focused how America looks at race and started some of the conversations that are going on now to this day. And Alex Haley got his start in the U.S. Coast Guard. You go to Errol Brown, who's our first Coast Guard flag officer, African American, an engineer, and certainly a person of character by any measure. Master Chief Vince Patton, who I just saw the day before yesterday in D.C., who continues to be a figure larger than life. And Vince has consecrated more ground in more places than you can shake a stick at. And he is alive in our service. And then, of course, Vice Admiral Manson Brown, who was in the job I'm in now, just a couple of years ago. First African-American 3-star admiral in the United States Coast Guard. These are the lines of our service who have consecrated places from Alaska to Cuba to points all around this world. And they are the ones who paved the way for you to be here and for the African American and people of all colors of today and in the future to make their mark and to demonstrate that what's important in our service, what's important to our nation, is what you can contribute and what you bring to the game, and everything else is a distant second. And so I am thankful for these celebrations because we do have much to celebrate. We're not done yet. We've got work to do moving forward so that every young man and woman in America, when they look at joining the military, joining our service, the Coast Guard, they can ask themselves, can I meet the standards? That's the only question they need to ask. It doesn't matter where they come from or what they look like. Can I meet the standards? And that is our only measuring stick. And so we need to make it possible for them to see themselves be in every place that they can be in this service. And because of that, we need to keep working towards this. And I want to give a shout out to Seaman Lane. Not very often does an E3 service, and an E3 is the third level for use our family from OMI who may not be dialed in to the Coast Guard ranks. That's a big deal for her to be the MC here. There's a whole bunch of senior people. We're all busy. We've all got things to do, and it's very easy to overlook these opportunities to celebrate what makes our service and our nation great. But I'm glad that you're here today to celebrate that. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Vice Admiral. The Coast Guard Black History Planning Committee and Oakland Military Institute take great pleasure in welcoming our distinguished guests, friends, and colleagues. We now ask you to sit back and enjoy a performance from Oakland Military Institute.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good. That's good. The Oakland Military Institute thanks Coast Guard Island for letting us come here and perform today. First up, we have our African dance high schoolers. Please give them a round of applause. will perform. Next up, the Oakland Military Institute presents our hip-hop dancers.
Thank you so much, OMI, for sharing your talents with us. Please give them another round of applause. Now I would like to bring up Commander Boss, who is going to introduce our guest speaker for today.
Thank you, Stephen Layton. I'm humbled by the keynote speaker we have with us today. Runoko Rashidi is not just a humanitarian, an essayist, a historian. He is someone who should give us pause, give us the opportunity to really take stock in what we can do going forward. He is a historian, a research specialist, a writer, a world traveler, a public lecturer focusing on African presence globally and the African foundations of world civilizations. He should bring us back to center. So I am very proud to introduce him, but to give you just a little bit of a piece of where he has been and how he can inspire you to reach out and think of those places you've yet to discover. He has lectured in more than 110 colleges and universities around the world, including places or universities in Australia, Barbados, Belize. I want to know whether he's gone diving in Belize. Canada, Costa Rica, Egypt, England, France, India, Japan, Namibia, the Netherlands, Russia, Thailand, Trinidad, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe. I could not get visas to some of those places when I was working at U.S. Africa Command, but somehow, with his esteemed presence known globally, the good Mr. Rashidi was able to do so. So without further ado, thank you very much for being with us, and please welcome Mr. Runoko Rashidi.
Thank you very much, and wouldn't you know it, we developed a little technical glitch, something about the hip-hop dancers. It must have been so good, threw it off a little bit. So we'll see if we can correct that momentarily. I must confess that when I first heard from my friend Sheldon here, I was very, very excited about doing something on a Coast Guard basis, new for me. I've lectured on military bases in Japan. I believe I've lectured on Army bases in the Dakotas, but it was very exciting for me. And then I got the theme, which I didn't quite know how to address. I think I'm going to do an effective job, assuming we can get the visuals back up, But I must also confess that looking around at all these uniforms makes me a tad nervous. So I'll have to adjust to that. But the blues that you're wearing is not too much different than the blues that I have on right now. So just give me one more minute.